The first time my wife and I met was at a small restaurant near my workplace. That day, I went to have lunch with one of my colleagues, and I could not ignore her sitting alone. I was used to approaching girls and sweeping them off their feet with my sweet words, and I thought I would get lucky with my wife. However, she completed the line I wanted to use on her before I did. I was impressed to see that, but it also meant she was a tough nut to crack. As I had predicted, instead of blushing and smiling like other women, she locked her eyes with mine, faked a smile, and continued eating her food. That was my first time being ignored like that by a woman, and it was embarrassing because everyone's eyes were on us. Still, overall, I found her attitude very charming and different from the rest of the women I had met. I kept talking to her without getting a response, and finally, after I tried so much, she smiled. When she smiled genuinely that time, I knew I had broken through her high walls, and with a snap of a finger, we were talking and laughing together. The conversation we had felt like we had known each other for a long time, flowed freely and naturally. Despite being complete strangers, we chatted like best friends who had not seen each other in a while. At the end of my 30-minute break, we exchanged contacts and Facebook handles. There was something I was looking out for, and when I saw that, I asked her out. I was convinced we were a perfect fit, and I didn't want to make the same mistake I made with my ex-girlfriends. Of course, she said yes, and we became inseparable. We even wore matching outfits occasionally because she thought it was sweet. We dated for 9 months before we married, and though my friends thought I was moving too fast, I didn't think there was a better time to officially make her mine. About 2 weeks before our wedding, I leased a bigger apartment, and we moved in when we returned from our honeymoon. The first year of our marriage was splendid. I had never been deeply in love like I was with my wife, so I did anything I could to make her smile every day. Before we got married, I noticed that my wife was fond of my stepbrother, and she often talked about him after our family hangouts. My stepbrother was a gym instructor, and as a result of that, he was heavily built. He was also handsome and the kind of guy ladies love to be around. In the past, I had female friends who abandoned me the moment they met my stepbrother, and this mostly had to do with his looks. Since my wife had 3 older brothers and was used to being around guys, I believed she also saw him as her brother. I never suspected that her talking about his looks and how well-built he looked was subtly telling me that she was into him. I was even glad that she had a way of always bringing him into her conversations, as well as her brothers. This was because I wanted our families to be one big happy family, and I didn't want her shutting out my family members, including my stepbrother. I had been with him since I was 13, and he was 17, and I didn't want anyone to come between the bond we shared. On my 28th birthday, my wife decided to throw a surprise birthday party for me at home, and she tricked me into coming home early from work that day. I had to take the family emergency excuse to leave work early, only to go home to a packed house. My parents, stepbrother, and some of my friends were there, and my wife's parents and her older brother were there too. The surprise worked, and I was so happy to see everyone at my house that evening. It was a small party with a lot to eat and drink. By this time, our marriage was already 1 year old, and we didn't have any children yet. After eating and drinking, everyone decided to hang around since they were mostly family members and close friends. Also, it was pouring heavily outside, and no one had the excuse of going to work the next day since it was a Saturday. Everyone in the room was an adult, and in no time, we were arguing about politics and our economic crisis. The conversation grew intense as we all tried to outtalk one another, and that was when I noticed my wife was not with us. I didn't even notice when she left because she was sitting behind me. So I asked around for her. Everyone said they had not seen her until her mom casually said she had seen her walk down the corridor with my stepbrother. At first, I didn't want to go and look for them, but after some minutes and I didn't see them or hear their voices, I excused myself. Walking down the corridor, I paid attention in case I heard voices, but I didn't hear a sound. When I didn't hear a sound, I felt something was wrong, but I couldn't tell what it was. As I approached our room, I began to hear soft, muffled moans, and my heart nearly dropped in my stomach. I walked closer to our room, pressed my ear against the door, and could not believe what I heard. I was devastated and heartbroken, but I had to keep myself together. A part of me wanted to go in there and give them the beatings of their lives, but I knew it would only complicate things. So I slowly pushed the door open, and luckily they didn't hear a creak because they were so busy. I turned on my phone video recorder, recorded them, and quietly returned to the living room. About 15 minutes later, my stepbrother returned first, and some minutes later, she came in. She changed her clothes and took her bath so no one would suspect anything. When we were complete, I asked if everyone wanted to see a movie, and they all agreed. Then I told my wife to go and make popcorn for everyone. While she was making the popcorn, I transferred the video I had recorded to my flash drive so I could plug it into my large screen television. We were settled as soon as the popcorn was shared with everyone. I played the video, and though they did not understand at first, their mouths eventually fell when they watched the video. My wife and stepbrother were the most surprised ones, and they could not say anything or defend themselves. They sat there speechless. Our parents were shocked and disappointed, and none of them could say anything. They were all ashamed and expected me to react in a certain way, but I didn't. Immediately after the video ended, I asked my wife and stepbrother if they liked the movie, but they couldn't maintain eye contact. Funnily enough, it stopped pouring at the same time, but no one made an attempt to leave. When my wife could not bear the silence anymore, she started crying and begging. Her mom was so angry that she yelled at her, but she didn't stop. I went into our room and packed her things so she could leave with her parents, and eventually, she did. No one dared beg on her behalf, not even her parents. My stepbrother left before my parents, but what he had done caused a rift between us. Everyone left that day with their heads buried in shame, especially my wife, and there's no need to ask if I divorced her because I did. It was even worse because I never spoke to her again. I didn't only cut ties with her, I did with my stepbrother too, and things never remained the same in my family. It's been 2 years now, and I'm finally able to tell this story because I have been able to let go. Though it hurt a lot, and I still don't think she deserved forgiveness, I had to do it for myself. I met another woman, and we're taking things one step at a time.